All right, guys. So short and sweet, how you can connect Klaviyo to a Google Sheet using the API. So I have this chart here as always. So I'm gonna explain everything what we're going to do today. So first, we need to get two things from Klaviyo to make this work. One is getting the token. So this part is simple. We don't need to do any authentication, anything of that. It's just getting in the UI, we can get the token. But we need to get the metric IDs. So whatever you wanna pull from Klaviyo, we need to reference it as an ID. I was checking and I couldn't figure out how to get like the IDs that we need. However, in the documentation, we can call the endpoint metrics, and from there we can get all the metrics with all the IDs. So I found that was the easiest way. You don't need to worry about it. I coded a function for that, so you can just run it yourselves and get the IDs. All right. And once we have that, we can code, right? So in this case, this is the code structure. As always, we will have a config with all the variables that we can change easily. Then we will have a main function that is going to be an orchestrator. And this orchestrator will call two functions here. So the first one is that in this case for this demo, I will pull campaigns only, but you can do more things with Klaviyo, right? You can SMS and stuff like that. I just created a campaign. To show you what I mean, if you go to Klaviyo here, you can see that I created these campaigns just for this demo. All right, so I have 4, and then I cancel one. I kind of like open the emails and stuff, so you can see some metrics here in open rate and click rate. So that's pretty much what I want to pull from Klaviyo to a Google Sheet, right? But if you have more data, all works the same. If we go back to the chart here, so basically to pull campaigns, the way it works with Klaviyo is that we need to first pull the metadata from whatever we're pulling, right? So in this case, campaigns. So we need to pull the names and the IDs, right? And then once we have the metadata, we need to pull the metrics for that specific part that we want to pull, right? So in this case, campaigns. So I pull campaigns and then I get the metadata and then I get metrics, right? For those campaigns. And then the idea is that I will have another function, in this case, this one here, that is going to merge together, right? So it's going to take the metadata and then the metrics, and it's going to create like, it's going to tie together that stuff, and then it's going to write it in the spreadsheet. That's pretty much the logic here. So you can see if we have one function that is going to take care of pulling the campaigns metadata, another one that is going to be the metrics part, and then another one that is going to merge the data, and then another one that is going to write the data to a sheet. So that's the idea here, right? So let's do it, right? So first we need to create a spreadsheet. So I'm going to do it from scratch so you can see how I'm doing everything. All right, so we are here in the spreadsheet. So you go to extensions, app script. Also, actually, I think this is already big enough. You can see, yeah. So let's rename this as well. All right, so first we need to create the config that I mentioned, right? So we need to start with config, right? So pretty much my config always is a variable with more variables inside that we can change easily, right? So you can see here that we have some things. So I want to walk through everything. So the first part of the private API key, we need to get that. Then the campaign sheet is pretty much how you want the sheet to be called. Once I run this code, it's going to create the sheet, right? So I'm just going to call it like Klaviyo campaigns, but you can call it whatever you want. In this case, what you want to pull. So emails, I actually put everything here just in case you guys are pulling SMS or something, it won't break. But in this case, I'm just pulling from email, right? But you can change this depending on whatever the channels that you're using, right? Then this is like you can think of it like the from and to of the report that you want to run here. In this case, I'm just running from the last for this month. Actually, it's the whole year. If you can see from the 1st of January until from the last year. But I just created this account so you can see that I don't have, it was just this month, right? And then this is at the time zone. Usually the default is UTC, but I don't know, guys, if you're like, I know you can change this like the time zones and stuff. So if you want to change that, that might change the report a little bit. So that's why I put it here, because you are using a time zone specific for your reports. You change that here as well. And this is the other part that I mentioned, metrics, right? So you can see the way the API understands what metrics you want to pull is like with some IDs. but like it doesn't show you like this straightforward. So you need to like call the endpoint and get a list of IDs so you can kind of like reference stuff. So I coded that so you don't need to worry about that. So let's start with this one, the private API key. So how to get that? So you are here, right, in Klaviyo, and you can see here that you can just select your name at the bottom, and then you go to settings, right? So it's pretty straightforward. You see you have the option see here API keys, and you can create API keys. So this is the one that I was using for this test, but let's create another one and call it test2, right? So here you can do a bunch of stuff. You can like, for example, just give it like specific scopes. As you can see in this case, I could just select campaigns and yeah, metrics, because we need to pull the metrics part. But or you can also like only have read in case you're just reading data, right? Like in this case, it would work because I'm just reading data. You can like literally have full access, which will like you can read data and also you can write data to Klaviyo, right? When I say write data, means like edit something in Klaviyo itself using the API, right? In this case, I will just put like I don't know, like just this one full access just for this demo, but you understand what I'm saying here, right? And then create, and this is the API key, right? So you copy that and then you go keep to the code and then you paste it. And then we need to get the metrics. In this case, the metrics that I want to pull are like the deliver, the opens, bounce, and fail from my emails. So this part here, let me go back to show you. So you can see the open rate, the click rate, and then if you open this, you can see like the bounce rate and all that stuff, right? That's what I want to pull here. But how do I know these metrics, right? These IDs. So I call this function here that if that it will do that for you. So you just need to run it once. So for example, here we can call it like metrics. So if you make sure you have the token already, right? Because this one is gonna use it. So you just run it once. Okay, first time you run this, gonna pop up that you need to give access. So you can see here that it will list the metrics that you have in your account, right? So what do you want to pull? So for example, I'm subscribed from SMS marketing, you're gonna use this ID. Drop emails, you're gonna use this ID, right? Yeah, so I just try to make it super simple for you guys to understand. So you see it's gonna list the metric and then the ID. So you use that, right? In this case, I already mapped the ones that I wanna pull from Klaviyo, which is like emails deliver, opens from my emails, bounce and fail, right? And yeah, like let's start with like continue with my chart here. The next one is gonna be the orchestrator. So we understand with the orchestrator we will know what actually the code is doing. And this is the main orchestrator, as you can see, right? So what it's doing is first is fetching the campaigns metadata as I mentioned in the beginning, then it's fetching the metrics, then it's merging both, and then it's running the data to a sheet, right? And this is just a catch and error in case something breaks. And then so let's start with this one, right? So let's fetch first the campaigns, the one that we need for the campaigns. And so here what we're doing first is just setting up this variable that is going to aggregate everything. Then here for each campaign channel, right? So in this one here, right, we're doing like this loop and pulling the data, right? So this is the endpoint that we're using, campaigns, and we're filtering by channel. So this is just creating the headers that we need to send to a request, which pretty much is just the API key, and that is always the same in every API. This is the last the stable part, like the latest stable API. So just if something changes, there's an update or something, you can change the date here. And then it pretty much is just looping, right? So it's doing some pagination For the ones that are not familiar with pagination means that like the way APIs works, that it doesn't show you all the data at once, right? So usually you can think of it like a book. It's gonna show you the first page, you do stuff with the first page data, and then if you need more data, you request the second page and so on, right? Assuming you have a bunch of data, it's gonna loop first page, second page, third page. That's the logic. In this case, it will be super fast because I only have like 4 or 5 metrics that I have here, like because this is a demo. But in case you have like a bunch of data, it might take a little bit longer, right? Until it goes through all the pages and aggregates all the data. But yeah, that's pretty much what it's doing here, right? So just looping through pages and getting the data. This just in case there's an error. So once he just here, it's just collecting the campaigns items, right? And then again, this is the pagination part, right? So usually if there are more data, the API tells you like there's something else at the end, right? So you can see here that it says like, yeah, there is something next page. There's a next page. So request that. And when that doesn't exist, that means that it's the end. So just finish, right? And then it returns everything. That's the logic here. So, and usually all APIs were the same. So yeah. So now the second part is getting the metrics, right? So this one is a bit longer, but you can see here always with some steps so you understand. So basically here, what I'm doing is pulling the metrics, right? And I need the counts, right? And this is just like a variable that's gonna aggregate everything. So here first, what we're doing is just pretty much creating like the request body that we need, right? So this is how you call the API to get the metrics. And here again, like from when until when. And then here, we're creating the options, again, just passing the API key and the revision. And then here we're doing pagination again, right? It's always the same thing, pagination. Something here that I added is like this thing here because like this API, what I noticed is that it's kind of like picky. Like you cannot make calls like quickly. It's gonna wait a little bit, and like it's kind of like a little bit picky when it comes to like how often you can call the API. Like you need to like respect some times. So that's why I added this, because sometimes it might just throw you an error that you are making too many calls or something. So if that happens, it's gonna retry. You can see 3 attempts, right? So if throws you an error, whatever, it's gonna wait a little bit and then try again. So that way it doesn't break. You don't need to be running this manually, right? So once you get the data, all the metrics, right, you're parsing that data, and then here we're just kind of like determine the label, right? Like the ones that I put here that I wanted for metrics. And we're just kind of like, here is just kind of like building, the data, like mapping everything with the metrics that I want to put on with the data that I got, right? And then here, once I have the data, I'm just kind of like adding everything to my variable that is like holding everything. And when it finishes, it just returns everything, right, per campaign. And this is by campaign, so we can map with this other function that we pull the campaigns, right? So once we have this data, now we need to merge that, right? So if we check, we are here in the step, we already finished with this tree. So now we need to merge the data. And once we have all the mapping, everything looking good, we write that to a sheet. So this one is pretty short. It's just a quick mapping. So this is the one you see here. So pretty much we're getting from one side the metadata, from the other side the metrics, and this function what it's doing is pretty much mapping, right? So you can see here that we are just transforming the data. Then we are finding the matching in both ends. And then here we are merging, right? And this is just to make it simple when we're writing the data. So you can see here the next function that writes the data, this one, is receiving that, right? It's that data that it came. So you see we merge the data here, and here is organize the data, and we just pass that to this function, this last function, and that writes to the sheet, right? So we receive the sheet name and the rows. The sheet name I already put it here, right? So here we are clearing the sheet. So the logic here pretty much is like if there's a sheet already clears the sheet. So every time that you run this writes new data. Otherwise, if there's no sheet, it's gonna create the sheet for you. So you can see here no sheet, create the sheet. If there's a sheet, clears the sheet. And here we're writing the headers. In this case, this is the data that I want, right? Campaign ID, the name, this is coming from the metadata, and this is coming from the metrics. And then here we are just writing the data, right? In this case, we write the headers in the first row, and then from there we write the rest. And that's pretty much what we need for this, right? So let's run it and see if it actually works. Yeah, so we run main. In this case, again, it's gonna pop up that we need to grant access. And if we go to a sheet, we should be able to see the data, right? So this is the data. And you can see it's a 5 me. Actually, there's some new stuff here that Google Chrome implemented that you can do now. It's like you do this and then you add that. Oh, that's pretty sweet. So now you can compare within the same tab. That's pretty nice. So yeah, like this is pretty much what is happening now, right? So we have campaign here. Well, in this case, let's put it all time. Right, so we have the campaign's name here. You can see the same with the IDs. This is coming from the metadata, the status, sent, one that I cancel, the channel created, when was created, and this is the part that I needed, right? So for example, was it delivered? In this case, I just sent 2 emails, so that's why 2 emails were delivered, that's fine. And then I open it 3 times, one of them twice, just for this demo. None of them bounced and none of them was a failed. So yeah, that's the logic here. And yeah, you can just replicate this if you pull in data for SMS or any other type of data here, right? So the only thing that you will need to change is the mapping here, right? Because in the mapping I'm using for my emails. And same when you're pulling data for the metrics, right? Depending on what metrics you're pulling, you can edit that here. But yeah, apart from that, this code is a good start for you guys, so you can start playing with this API. So if you have any questions, let me know. Just write them down below in the comments. I will reply to them as soon as I see them. All right.